In the mist-shrouded highlands of colonial Kenya, a conflict was brewing, one that would shake an empire and reshape a nation. This is the story of the Mau Mau Rebellion, a tale of dispossession and defiance, of forests turned battlefields, and a people's unyielding quest for dignity. Today, we re-examine the struggle that forced an empire's retreat and paved the way to Kenya's independence. When Britain established the East Africa Protectorate in the 1880s, it claimed to suppress the slave trade, but its true ambition lay in empire building. By 1920, the Protectorate became the colony of Kenya, its fertile central plateau rebranded the White Highlands. There, some 60,000 acres of ancestral Kikuyu farmland passed into European hands, displacing families who had tilled those fields for generations. Yet land was only the first indignity. Colonial administrators enforced labor taxes and passed laws that rendered Africans second-class subjects on their native soil. Political power resided with settlers. Africans, their grievances dismissed by advisory councils, watched as officials broke promises of post-war reform. Returnees from World War II, veterans imbued with the rhetoric of freedom, found themselves landless and marginalized. Their frustration would soon feed a more radical nationalist vision. Between 1947 and 1951, voices within the Kenya African Union began to fracture. Moderate leaders persisted in petitions, yet the land question went unanswered. In response, thousands of Kikuyu, Embu, and Meru, men and women came together in forest clearings. They swore binding oaths, a covenant of secrecy and solidarity. The movement that emerged would become known, for reasons still debated, as Mau Mau. At its core was the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. Under the command of Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi, graduates of clandestine forest schools learned rudimentary military tactics. Armed with homemade shotguns, spears, and sheer determination, these fighters relied on intimate knowledge of the Aberdars and Mount Kenya slopes. Villagers, bound by oath and kinship, provided food, intelligence, and guides, sustaining the rebellion's lifeblood. On October 20th, 1952, Governor Sir Evelyn Baring declared a state of emergency. His justification, a wave of assassinations targeting both Europeans and Kikuyu loyalists. Within hours, Operation Jock Scott saw hundreds of Kenya African Union leaders arrested. Among them, Jomo Kenyatta, later Prime Minister of an independent Kenya, was charged with orchestrating the insurrection. But decapitating the movement's political leadership only drove armed adherents deeper into the forests. By early 1953, Mau Mau units executed coordinated nighttime raids on settler farms and colonial outposts. Tensions erupted into the Lari massacre on March 26th, when fighters and Home Guard militias clashed, leaving over 70 dead, including women and children. This atrocity hardened Britain's resolve to crush the rebellion. What followed was a comprehensive counterinsurgency of unprecedented scale. Under Lieutenant General Sir George Erskine, the colonial government wove an ironclad web of curfews, identity cards, and prohibited zones. The Royal Air Force launched Operation Mushroom, bombing suspected forest camps from the air. In Nairobi, Operation Anvil sealed off the city. Over 50,000 Kikuyu men were detained within days and funneled into transit camps. Interrogators used this captive pool to extract intelligence, pinpoint forest hideouts, and dismantle urban support networks. Beyond the capital, nearly 1 million Kikuyu were uprooted into fortified, protected villages, behind barbed wire and guarded by home guards. Once vibrant communities became detainment zones, where forced labor, malnutrition, and disease ran rampant beneath the watchful eyes of colonial patrols. To fracture the Mau Mau from within, colonial authorities recruited surrendered fighters into pseudo-gangs. Under duress or bribery, these men infiltrated forest bands, betraying comrades and leading troops to hidden arms caches. Caroline Elkins would later document how up to 1.5 million Kikuyu were processed through camps of detention, torture, and summary execution, an unparalleled scale of repression in the British Empire. Between 1954 and 1956, the rebellion reached its bloody crescendo. Forests became lethal labyrinths, the perfect refuge for guerrillas, but also hunting grounds for counterinsurgents under shoot-to-kill orders. Mau Mau fighters struck settler patrols, sabotaged communication lines, and raided livestock herds. Though European casualties outside forest actions numbered fewer than 40, African civilian deaths soared as home guards and security forces unleashed reprisals. By mid-1955, fatigue, hunger, and fractured loyalties took their toll on the rebels. Intelligence-led sweeps and aerial reconnaissance corralled surviving bands into shrinking enclaves. On October 21, 1956, Dedan Kimathi was finally cornered and wounded by a tribal policeman turned home guard. His capture marked the de facto end of large-scale forest warfare. Kimathi's execution on February 18, 1957, at Kamiti Prison shocked the world. Yet pockets of resistance persisted until the emergency's formal conclusion in January 1960. The price paid by combatants and civilians was staggering. The Kenya Human Rights Commission later estimated that as many as 90,000 Kenyans suffered execution, torture, or maiming at the hands of security forces, while more than 160,000 were held without trial. The Hola Camp atrocity of March 1959, in which 11 men died during a forced labor protest, became a symbol of colonial cruelty. Yet Mau Mau fighters themselves were not without sin. Informers and loyalists faced public executions and village burnings. The Lari massacre, perpetuated by rebels against rival Kikuyu militia, was invoked to justify draconian reprisals. In a maelstrom of violence, the boundaries between insurgent and civilian blurred, and the tragedy extended to all parties ensnared in the struggle. Deprived of safe havens and starved of recruits by mass resettlement, the Mau Mau network began to unravel. By 1960, leaders like Field Marshal Musa Mariyama negotiated surrenders in exchange for amnesty, handing over their remaining forces to the fledgling Kenyan government. The emergency officially ended on January 12, 1960, but the political aftershocks were only beginning. Britain, chastened by the financial and moral cost of suppressing the rebellion, embarked on constitutional reform. The Swinnerton Plan, initially designed to undercut Mau Mau support by granting individual land titles to Africans, unintentionally empowered a rural elite that would form the backbone of post-colonial leadership. Lancaster House conferences in 1961 set a timetable for self-government. Jomo Kenyatta, released from detention, emerged as the unifying figure of the Kenya African National Union. When Kenya celebrated its independence on December 12, 1963, the pillars of British colonial power lay in ruins. In the decades that followed, Kenya's new leaders sidelined Mau Mau veterans, branding them criminals rather than freedom fighters. It was only in 2003 that President Mwai Kibaki formally recognized the movement's legitimacy. February 18, 2007, saw the unveiling of Dedan Kimathi's statue in Nairobi, a potent symbol of national reconciliation. In 2013, a British court-mandated settlement provided £19.9 million in compensation to surviving veterans in an official expression of regret, though without full legal admission of liability. Today, the forests and tunnels once wielded as instruments of liberation are heritage sites for reflection and tourism. The 2023 state visit by King Charles III, marked by expressions of sorrow for colonial-era abuses, underscored the ongoing negotiation over historical memory. The Mau Mau rebellion endures in Kenya's national psyche as both a source of pride and a cautionary tale. It reminds us that liberation is seldom neat or lawful by oppressor standards, and that true freedom demands more than ceremonial declarations. As the morning mist lifts once more over the Aberdares, we are left with the echoes of those who pledged to reclaim their land and dignity. The Mau Mau taught the world that an empire's might can falter when confronted by unwavering resolve. Their legacy challenges us to confront the injustices of the past honestly and to ensure that the wounds of history never again fester in silence. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of history's most defining moments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss another deep dive into our past.